In this video, we're just going to get some practice setting up null and alternative hypotheses for a hypothesis testing problem regarding two population means. So in our problem right here, we've got 200 observations were randomly sampled from a recent SAT reading and writing test. The same students took a reading test and a writing test, and their scores are shown below. So we've got student number 1, here is their reading score, here's their writing score. For student number 2, here's their reading score, here's their writing score, and so on and so forth. State the null and alternative hypotheses used to test the claim that there is a difference between the average reading scores and the average writing scores. So before I can do anything else, the first thing that I should be doing in a problem like this, first of all, we want to make sure we do have two separate populations. In this case, we've got our reading scores and we've got our writing scores. So we've got two separate data sets that I want to talk about. I need to make the determination, is this an example of paired sampling or is this an example of independent sampling? Meaning, if I look at the reading scores and I was to pick one reading score at random, let's say I pick student number 3's reading score, is that going to correspond to one particular writing score over here? And in this case, it probably only makes sense to compare student number 3's reading score with student number 3's writing score. I wouldn't want to compare different students' reading scores and writing scores because obviously they're different students, and I want to compare each individual student's reading score and writing score. So that's what tells me, I'm going to be working with paired sampling here. So this is an example of paired sampling, which is what we're focused on mostly in this section. So if we're working with paired sampling, what that means is that my parameter is going to be mu sub d, the mean of the differences. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and eventually force this data set to these two data sets to look like one data set. And the way that I do that, I'm going to take the mean from sample 1 and I'm going to subtract the mean from sample 2. Now in this case, we can make the decision up front. I don't really like this notation mu sub 1 and mu sub 2. I like to talk about it within the context of my problem. So here we said we're talking about reading scores and we're talking about writing scores. So perhaps instead of just using this generic 1 and 2, we'll call mu sub d, we'll call that mu sub r for the reading score minus mu sub w for the writing scores. So this is my parameter right here. This is what I'm going to be looking at for this problem. This is what I'm going to be using to set up my null and alternative hypothesis. So in this problem, our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis, as usual, I'm going to start with the alternative hypothesis because I think it's easier to look at the claim that's being made. So we want to test the claim that there is a difference between the average reading and writing scores. So our parameter we just said is the mean of the differences. And if there's a difference, what that would mean here if we subtracted them, mu sub r minus mu sub w, if the mean of the reading scores is different than the mean of the writing scores, what that means is I'm going to get some number when I subtract them. What matters is what I'm not going to get is 0, because if they were the same, I would get 0. If they're different, I will get something other than 0, right? If I take 5 minus 4, I end up with 1. But if I were to take 5 minus 5, two of the same numbers, I always end up with 0. So when we say there is a difference, this is just saying when I subtract them, I'm going to get something that's not equal to 0. I don't necessarily know whether one is bigger, greater than or smaller than. I'm just going to say the mu sub d is not equal to 0. And once I have that alternative hypothesis set up, the null hypothesis should follow fairly simply, mu sub d. And I always like to write out what mu sub d is. Mu sub r minus mu sub w is equal to 0. Remember that null hypothesis is always a statement of equality right here. So these would be the null and alternative hypotheses that I'm going to use to answer these questions and to